So this evening we're actually celebrating 3 festivals in a row. Do any of you know what tonight is in the secular world? Halloween. So it's Halloween, which is very much an American holiday. So South Africans, we think we know what it's about, but not really. I don't think, have any of you been trick-or-treating before? Luke says he has. Mom says he hasn't, so I'm not too sure. I tried once, and the neighbors didn't know what I was doing. And obviously they didn't have treats, because it's just not something South Africans do. But we celebrate, well, not necessarily, but certain parts of the world, and I think some South Africans do celebrate Halloween. And then we have All Saints, which is tomorrow, and then we have All Souls, which is the following day on the 2nd. So how do all these interlink, and do they have any sort of symbolism behind them? I'm going to try and dispel some of the myths as well. So Halloween actually comes from, there we go, that's the slide I was looking for. Halloween actually comes from the Old Hallows Eve, which was the eve before All Saints. And now All Saints, as Father Meshach explained today, was a celebration that was somewhere in about the early 19th century when the Catholic Church established a day to commemorate the saints. Now saints, and if you were here the very first night, about a month ago, we looked at St.Francis on our patronal festival. Now saints aren't worshipped as many people do think. Now I do know that there's a Presbyterian church down the road called St. Francis, and many, many years ago we were one body or one community. But Presbyterians have an issue with us having statues in the church. So you can't see, but just behind there's a little statue of Mary, and where Benjamin's sitting, we used to have a statue of St. Francis. And they say it's idol worship. No, they just didn't have photographs back then. So we don't worship or bow down to the saints, but we do remember them or we venerate them, particularly for the life that they lived, and as a human example as how we can try and get as close to as possible to live a Christian life like Jesus. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to live a life like Jesus because he was just perfect. But if we look at the saints, and even the saints had their issues, sometimes it's easier to look at the saints and see what they did from a human perspective, even though they had their flaws. So sometime around the 9th century, the Catholic Church commemorated a day, and it was a solemn day where they commemorated the saints. But in the 16th century, the Irish and the Catholic Church, or Catholic branches of the church, introduced it as some levity to the holiday. And the tradition of Halloween originates partly from ancient Celtic festivals, particularly a day by the name of Samhain, or Samhain, and a festival there where they used to celebrate the dark half of the year. In other words, we are kind of going into summer now. We just have that large bit of spring, so we don't understand the dark half of the year. It's not referring to something evil, but they're in autumn now, and it's the harvest time, and it's the festival, and they used to celebrate the fact that it was getting darker and darker, and they would light bonfires, and they would dress up in costumes and run around as almost like a role play as to ward off evil spirits. So sometime during the 16th century, they combined these two festivals. The festival of commemorating the saints, but also the festival where they commemorated the fact that it was a changing of seasons. And over the periods and centuries, many types of celebrations were introduced into this autumn day, referring to Samhain. There was some coverage between the All Saints and Old Hallows Eve, and some things like trick or treat had some origins actually in Christian rituals and traditions. There was an English custom of knocking on doors and asking for a soul cake. Now, I don't know what a soul cake is, but I think it was some sort of treat. And after which the recipient, in other words, people who knocked on the door, received the soul cake, they would actually, They would actually, They would offer up prayers for those in the household who had passed on. Or they would do a door knocking, which would they would sing, or they would tell jokes and recite a rhyme, or even perform some kind of trick before receiving the treat. And over time, this idea evolved into the light-hearted, warming prank, which is also performed with the residents. So a sort of light-hearted prank was performed if the residents did not give them a treat. And later on, trick and treat Trick or treat, as we know it today, was about dressing up in costumes and running around the neighborhood and asking for trick or treat, and the idea that a sort of prank was played on the household that didn't actually give the children a treat. So that's Halloween. It's kind of like us celebrating Shrove Tuesday, just before Ash Wednesday. It has no meaning. It's just a fun night of pancakes and celebration before we go into the time of Lent. So that's Halloween. Now, to dispel some myths, some congregations and congregationalists and some other traditions within South Africans, and you might have heard this, we shouldn't celebrate, or as Christians, we shouldn't celebrate Halloween because it is the devil's birthday. Have you heard this one before? First of all, the devil wasn't born. He was created, if we understand the story. And so it's not necessarily got to do with anything like that, although it does have some sort of pagan influence. But then if we're going to do away with Halloween, we should do away with Easter and Christmas and Easter eggs and Christmas and presents and Christmas trees and that sort of thing. So it's about celebrating these holidays with an idea of where they come from and why we do it. But tonight I want to particularly look at All Souls Day, a day that we kind of forget. We know about Halloween because it's a very secular holiday. You can go into the shops and you can buy trinkets, not as big as Christmas, but if you had to go overseas into particularly America, the stores will be laden with orange and black and jack-o'-lanterns and buying pumpkins and carving and that sort of thing. But if you, and the same with Christmas and those sort of things, but we kind of forget about All Souls. Now, All Souls Day is celebrated on the 2nd, so in other words, it'll be on Tuesday. And I think Father Mishak, you're having a service what time? All Souls? At 9 in the morning. 9 in the morning, if you can make it. So All Souls is actually looking at not necessarily the saints and the martyrs of the past, but now actually looking at those in our lives who have departed. So the people that in our lives have unfortunately passed on. And although I think many of us have had, and have a look at our congregation through the last 2 years, we've experienced quite a few tragedies, and just particularly in the last couple of weeks, just with accidents, let alone COVID, just with accidents alone, we've had quite a few tragedies just within our congregation and with our members. This morning we prayed for someone whose husband was accidentally killed in a plane crash. These things happen, and the nice thing is that if we read in Revelations 21, Jesus speaks about, or God speaks to the fact that one day where there will be a new heaven and there will be a new life. I just want to read 21, Revelations 21, verse 3. I should have brought my torch. And I heard a loud shout, and there was a throne saying, "Look, God's home is amongst us now, and he will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be there with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain. All these things will be gone forever." We as Christians and other faiths believe that there's something after this life. And there's a little illustration I want to show you. So I want you to believe that this is a never-ending rope. Those of you who might have watched the movie or know the analogy of Mary Poppins will know she had a bag that things could come out of. Things like stepladders and cakes and umbrellas, and it would just come out of this bag. So I want you to believe that this is a never-ending rope. And if this rope represents your eternity, your everlasting life in heaven, it never ends. But this little bit here represents your life on earth. But we are so worried about this little portion of life on earth that we kind of forget about this eternity in heaven with God, where he says there is no pain, there is no suffering, and he will wipe the tears from our faces. And this has got to do predominantly with security. It's financial security. It's education. It's, in this country, unfortunately, actual physical security. We are so obsessed about making sure that we are safe and that we are comfortable, and that we are looked after, and that we have the things we need, that we sometimes forget about the rest of this. What is eternity? When I was in grade 5, we had a teacher that once explained this to me, and it kind of blew my mind, and it still sits with me today. She described the story of every 100 years, Mount Everest has a warm month. And on the hottest day of that warm month, a small bird decides that it doesn't want to go around Mount Everest. So I want you to picture Mount Everest, if you can, in your mind. There in Kathmandu, in Nepal. And this bird decides he doesn't want to go around the mountain or fly around the mountain. He wants to go over it because there is no snow on top of the mountain. When he gets to the top of the mountain, every 100 years this happens, the bird decides to sharpen his beak by just going, moving his head from side to side, and then flies off straight down the mountain. The question she asked us when I was in grade 5, how long do you think it would take for that mountain to erode by a bird sharpening its beak every 100 years? And she left us with the idea of that is eternity. And we know what Everest is like, or we know that Everest is actually increasing in height every year as the Himalayas actually expand and push it up. So eternity is a time that that mountain will never, ever get to a point where that bird, or those theoretic bird, will come and sharpen its beak every 100 years, and that mountain will be nothing left. That is eternity. And God says He has a place for us. In the Isaiah reading, we heard tonight that God is an everlasting God. He is eternal. And He wants to, as in the Revelations story says, He wants to be with us forever. And sometimes we don't understand why things and bad things happen. Some of us have a wonderful life, and we have grandkids, and we kind of just pass away in our sleep. But some of us, unfortunately, don't have that experience. And this is a wonderful day on the 2nd of November to remember those souls who have gone before us. COVID has taken so many of us in the last 2 years. And I don't think any of us here have not been affected by some sort of loss thanks to this pandemic. So a wonderful way to remember those is once a year, not only on the day of the memorial, but also when we remember all those who have passed. And we do not worship the dead, but what we do is we remember them. So we do things like we have photographs in our house. We do things like we go and put flowers on the gravestones. And in the Eastern traditions, or the Eastern Orthodox traditions, what they do is they have this wonderful tradition of placing candles on the gravestones during the time of the 2nd of November each year, during All Souls and All Saints. So the graveyards are alight. There's one more slide. Beautiful. You can't see that from so far, but it's lit up with candles and lit up with flowers, and that whole graveyard is alight. And it's a celebration of those who have gone before us. So tonight I want to kind of try and do something similar, because we're not near our grave. Or if you do, and you want to, and you do have someone on their garden remembrance wall, you can do the same. But we're going to go up during a song, and we are going to take a votive candle, which is on this little pillar in the front here, and you can go and place it on the votive candle stand. I'm going to light those two acolyte candles, so you can actually just take it from there instead of everyone trying to strike a match. So I'll light those two candles, and we can just go up during this time while the song is playing. The song is called Remembrance. And listen to the words. They actually speak quite deeply. So, and it's quite interesting. I didn't choose the music today, but it was quite interesting that even in some of the music that was chosen tonight, there was this idea of remembering those who have gone before us. And even the last song, the last chorus in the last song we did, talks about that. So tonight, when you have the opportunity to come up here, whoever it is who you would like to remember, place a candle up on the votive candle stand, and we'll end off the service after the song. Right.
kisses from the west, so far your grace has carried me. Until I see you face to face, until at last I've won my race. Remind me you're not finished yet.